Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I want to talk with Alan Saunders about maybe the Steelers offense has the plan backwards. We've talked about them being a run-first team. They can run the ball, but maybe it takes something to be shaken up by Arthur Smith. We'll talk about that shakeup and our Stars and Skulls grades for the Steelers lost for the Eagles. It's the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. More on them later. As I said before, we're joined by the man himself, Alex Saunders. He's back from SteelersNow.com. Alan, we've had some time to digest what happened in this game. We've been looking at some things. I want to focus on the offense to start off the show because they only scored 13 points. They left some things out on the field. They weren't able to win on third downs. And something that I just saw as I was looking at this game that I thought kind of bled into how things played out, and I know the Steelers want to warm themselves up to things, is when they ran the ball early, when it was like right into when the Eagles were kind of waiting for it. It's kind of what we've seen all year, right? Like teams, when they're running the ball and the teams know it, it is hard for the Steelers to get the run game going. They're not that kind of an offensive line yet that can bully you when you're sitting there waiting for them to do so. But I thought when the pass game completed some passes, even some underneath ones that just got positive yardage, I thought it backed up the Eagles defense. And I think I felt like that's a factor that's applied to their win over the Browns, the win over the Bengals, and several other wins throughout this season, where I think maybe the Steelers are trying too hard to be that run first team on the early downs. And maybe that Arthur Smith should be switching it up as far as, hey, you got Russell Wilson now. Trust him to find the smart throw here and there on an early down to back the defense up, and then you could get to running the ball on first and second down after you've hit on some of those passing plays like the flea flicker. Not exactly like the flea flicker because that was a trick play, but I feel like that could be a big shift that could help the Steelers offense. Am I overthinking this here, Alan, or do you think there's something there that Arthur Smith could be switching up?
I mean, anytime it's not working, I think you should look at doing things differently, as long as those things are smart to do, just because because it did, like as long as the other thing you're proposing to go to is also a good play, it's something that works, fine. But look at who's running routes for the Pittsburgh Steelers right now.
It's a good point.
If they're not going to run the ball successfully in any scenario, they are not going to win. Like, period. Like, I don't like, there's no other way forward for this offense the way it is currently put together without George Pickens in there. Like, I just don't see it. I don't know how you can scheme up a pass first offense with the talent they're rolling out onto the field right now. I just don't see it. I think they've got to run the ball. They've got to find a way to run the ball. I thought they were getting to it in the second half of that game, which I think is especially impressive against the Philadelphia Eagles defense that is really deep and usually works the other way. And the longer you play them, the better they get because they're fresher. And I thought the Steelers, they started to get to the run as that game went on. You can't go 5 straight 3-and-outs, though. I mean,
right. You
just can't. And so, I don't know. The pass wasn't working either. Like the five, they're. So I just think I don't see like an easy way out of the conundrum they're in there, where either you're playing something that you're probably not going to be very good at, or you're doing the thing that the other team expects you to do. It's kind of a lose-lose.
No, I feel you on that. On the look, the situation right now with George Pickens out, it does limit things. And I'm not saying be pass happy. I'm still saying have a balanced attack, but maybe on the early downs, trying to hit, try to, get some ISO, like how they would try to get some isolated looks where guys backed off Scotty Miller, and you hit him for a short hitch and it gets you 4 or 5 yards, or you get Calvin Austin or one of those plays. And I think they started to do that later in the game, and it helped open some things up. For example, I just did Jalen Warren because he's been the more productive back the last 2 games. But when he on drives when they ran the ball the last 2 games, but without passing yet in the drive, he has about four runs for 6 yards in drives when he's running the ball after a pass play is connected. He has about nine runs for about, I think it's 63 yards here in that. And that's not a telltale. It's not going to always work that way. But I think it shows that, like, especially when the Steelers are coming out and they're bringing those heavier packages on early downs and you're running right into it. And it's different if, when you play the Bengals doing that, because the Bengals aren't the defense you're scared of. But when you're playing against a team like the Eagles and a team I think like the Ravens that's going to bring a physical front, I think you do got to catch them being a little over aggressive and trust that Russell Wilson is going to make the smart play. May not get you 10, 20, 50, yards or anything like that. But if he gets you 4 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards through the air with a smarter passing attack, I think that can open some things up in the run game, because at least it did in this game when they did start to run the ball at the very few times that they actually did.
Yeah, the tough thing about the Eagles is they're actually not like that aggressive. Like they don't get like they're not the Browns where they're like trying really hard to get upfield.
Not fast. That they're blitzing.
Yeah. And so like for example, like a good way to get around this problem might have been the screen game, but I don't think the Eagles are a team that you can really screen like you can.
They're pretty athletic.
Yeah, and so like maybe not the best matchup. I'll say this: I think Arthur Smith, like most offensive coordinators, they like to get a first down before they start to get silly. Like that's like you don't want to go 3 and out. You don't want to put your defense in a bind. So you try to call, maybe safe is the wrong word, but like comfortable plays where you think you have a good chance of at least getting 3 yards and staying on schedule, as opposed to hunting for some chunks. Right, like your first 3 plays of a series are usually going to be plays where you're like, all right, just get 3 or 4, and let's get it moving and let's get it going. I think they should probably flip that order a little bit, and it's not necessarily about run or pass, but like the Justin Fields read option, like do that on the first play of the drive, right? Instead of after you get a first down, now you're bringing it in. Now, obviously, Fields got hurt on that play, and well, I don't even know if he's available this week, but like something like that where it's like, oh, okay, like run a reverse on 1st and 10. Like it's just like I think getting a little cuter earlier might be a necessity here as they try to find a way out of the situation they're in terms of teams just sitting on the run and them not really having a way to get them out of it.
I do think that's a factor in this. Here's Mike Tomlin. Here's a few questions. Jeff Hathorn asks him first about the run game a little bit there, and I asked him a couple questions here in his Monday press conference, because in Tuesdays he's now the Monday this week since they're playing on Saturday. But here was Mike Tomlin when he was asked a few questions about the offense.
Mike, what's made it tougher for you guys to run the ball recently? What is it? Execution, what reasons would you give?
It's probably a little bit of all of the above. We got to compliment those that we compete against and their schematics and their players' environment, but also we absorb a lot of the responsibility of the quality of our play or the lack thereof. When you're not getting possession downs, particularly early in the game, that has a component of it too as well. There have been several games in the last several weeks of that time frame that you mentioned that we've been 3 and out to start games, and you never get an opportunity to gain run game traction or accumulate the total number of snaps to play that component of the game when you're 3 and out and you're slow to winning possession downs, and that's been a component of the issue as well.
Mike, you talked about the phrase warming up to the competition. Would you say that was part of the problems that you guys went through yesterday, and how do you counter that when you've seen it happen a few times this year?
I just use it as a catchphrase to describe not winning possession downs early in the game, and so I just use it in that way. But it's about execution. There's nothing mystical about it. It's about preparing and positioning guys to win in those weighty moments and executing, and we haven't done it consistently enough at the early stages of football games.
Mike, you guys have won a lot of games this year, adjusting in-game to what opponents are doing and countering what they're doing. How do you apply that to the front part of the game and making that happen more so at the front of the end of the game, making the other team have to make those adjustments?
That's what you're talking about as it pertains to this week, or looking back at what's transpired.
Just like last week, you talked about like, hey, like, you know, losing those certain possession downs and then having to be the team that makes those adjustments in game.
Yeah, there's a cat and mouse strategic component to it. We make adjustments and alter our plans. Our opponent does the same. It's just a component of ball this time of year. We all got a lot of tape out there in terms of describing what we are from a personality perspective, and it's just a strategic component of it.
And to Tomlin's point, there is a strategic component of when you call certain things. My point that I was getting at was just that the pace of slowing things, and you know, it's like kind of what you talked about, Alan. You can kind of sense Arthur Smith is calling plays to kind of get the offense into the feel of the game before he starts taking some of those shots. And listen, maybe that's just what Pittsburgh needs to be right now with the way they are, because they are still the 10th best scoring team in the NFL with averaging 24 points a game. And that's above where we were expecting them to be ranking wise in the NFL. We thought that they'd be in the middle of the league, not the top 10. And, you know, maybe there's something there. But to me, I think that this could be worth another look at how they've done things, especially when they're going up against some of the better defenses in the NFL.
Yeah, and you know, the other part of it is too, I think they're trying really hard to win the turnover battle, and
yes,
you don't do that by taking excess risks on offense. I think they have now turned the ball over in 7 straight games. So like there's some concern there as well. Now look, Najee Harris generally very sure-handed, and I'm sure we'll get to that in Stars and Skulls, but like in general, I think that's a factor in the play calling as well, where they're like, hey, punts with this defense, not the worst thing in the world.
No, that's a very good point, playing to their strength there. We get to the Stars and Skulls grades next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you that this show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the app you can download right to your phone to get tickets to all your favorite live events. And it's the holidays, which means there's plenty to do in Pittsburgh. There's no better place to find tickets to your favorite live events than Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff so that you can see all the incredible deals on great seats and don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Right now, you can get tickets to plenty of holiday shows around Pittsburgh. It's that time of the year where there's a show every single week, several times throughout the week. But also, don't forget the Steelers play at Acrisure Stadium home on Christmas Day against the Kansas City Chiefs. It's sure to be a spectacle and a big game for playoff seeding that the Steelers will need to win at that point of the season. Get your tickets for that big game at Game Time, the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And remember, the Game Time guarantee means that you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section or row for less somewhere else, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference of those prices. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL. You'll get $20 off your first purchase, or go to their website, gametime.co. Terms and conditions apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's Game Time. We're also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the number one sportsbook in America. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. The Steelers start as 6.5-point road underdogs to the Ravens this week, but the money lines did move ever so slightly towards the Steelers with the TJ Watt news coming out. FanDuel Sportsbook right now has the money line at 225. It was about 240 or plus 225 for the Steelers. It was about plus 250 or earlier for this one. The money line now at minus 275 for the Ravens. That was I think more like a minus 295 earlier, but the over-under has also moved up to 44.5 points. It was lower than that earlier. So where will you put your money for Steelers-Ravens in the big rivalry game? Be sure to do so on FanDuel Sportsbook, the number one sportsbook in America. You can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you hit your first bet of $5 or more today. That's $150 of free bets today to new customers if you hit on your first bet of $5 or more. Only on FanDuel.com. Visit FanDuel.com to download America's number one sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. We head to our grades portion of this show. As always, we do stars and skulls. Stars are good, skulls are bad. 1 to 3 stars, 1 to 3 skulls. Looking at the rubric here, if you're on YouTube, if you've been listening to the show, you know the deal. And you also know that when you're listening to the show, and we cover a Steelers win, we start with the bad, work our way to the good. But when they lose, we start with the good and work our way to the bad. And Alan, one thing I think that we can both agree on about the grades here is that I think the best players the Steelers had in this game were their edge guys, TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. I'm not even going to make you guess. TJ Watt gets a 3-star grade, forced fumble, 2 sacks, consistently affecting the game. I also gave Alex Highsmith a 2-star grade. They were also the only guys to get more than 1 star in this game. Alex Highsmith getting lots of pressure in this game, helping against the run. I thought they were huge factors in the Steelers for this game. Did I leave anyone out of the multiple stars grades that I should have put in there?
So I just want to point out about those edge guys that I really liked was that when Jalen Hurts did scramble, they did not let him step up into the pocket. They kept contained and they forced him out to the sideline, and he had to make a throw on the run instead of stepping into it. And he threw a lot of those away, which is smart play by him. But those don't really show up on the stat sheet necessarily as big plays for those edge guys. But not letting him get back up inside of you there, in between the tackle and the end is a big deal, and they had been having trouble with that the last few weeks with Burrow and Winston. I thought they did a nice job of cleaning that up. As far as other 2-star guys, man, I mean, I guess you could throw Chris Boswell out there just because sets the Steelers team record in that game for most field goals in the season, breaking his own record. Needs I think 6 or 7 for the NFL mark, and just continues to be impressively automatic. But that's about all the other. That's probably about the only other thing I could throw out there.
Well, Chris Boswell did get a star. I gave him a 1 star in this game. I felt like, making regular field goals, that seems fun. That seems normal. I feel like maybe I'm being a little bit spoiled and just expecting Chris Boswell to just make all the kicks all the time. So he only gets 1 star in this one. But I did give out a handful of 1-star grades here because there were guys that did a lot of little things that didn't really kill the Steelers in return. We'll get to some of those guys in a sec. Russell Wilson, I gave a 1-star grade. I didn't think he killed the Steelers at any point. I think he kind of kept them in it with his ability to throw the ball at times. Granted, I think that there were some limited opportunities. Calvin Austin for his catch on the flea flicker, Pat Freiermuth for his touchdown. Beanie Bishop, I thought he had a really good play on a wide receiver screen where he blew up a play, and I didn't see him really get crushed outside of that play. Justin Fields for his run. Peyton Wilson played a really big role in the TJ Watt fumble. He kind of cut off Jalen Hurts trying to escape the pocket, and that kind of bought TJ Watt time to come and get the punch out. So I gave him a point there. Chris Boswell, as I said, Ben Skowronek, I think that he had a big catch in the game. I thought he was solid there. Minkah Fitzpatrick actually had 3 run stuffs in this game, was getting in the backfield a bit there. Wasn't really a part of the problem in the coverage game. We'll get to that in the skull segment there. Jalen Warren, I thought he had a couple hard runs. Cam Hayward, not a game-changing play, but still was solid up the middle. Dean Lowry actually had 4 pressures in this game. I actually thought that he had a decent outing. Patrick Queen, though he did miss some tackles and he got beaten a couple times in the pass game, he also had some important run stuffs. He played a big role in limiting Saquon Barkely. I felt like Mason McCormick was the only positive offensive lineman I could really talk about this week. Zach Frazier would have been up there without his tripping penalty, so I gave him a neutral grade. And then Keanu Benton, I thought he also played a solid role in helping the defense bottle up Saquon Barkley. Is there anyone that I'm giving a little too much credit here, Alan, in this list that you see?
No, good shout out to the defensive lineman. I thought they did a nice job with Barkley. Did not let him take over the game. That was sort of step 1. I think the defense failed on step 2, which is don't then get beat by the rest of them. But if you get beat up by Barkley, then it doesn't matter. And I thought the defensive line was kind of left alone to that job for most of the day. And I thought they did a pretty nice job, about 65 yards for Barkley. You'll take that against that guy every day of the week. Jalen Warren, dude, I think maybe, now that I think about it, I might have given him 2 stars just because he had 1 pass pro rep.
Oh, yeah.
Where that's like a 1.5 stars all by itself for me. That one where the guy, he faked like he was going to cut him, and then the guy jumped, and then he didn't go down, and he just power bombed him.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty awesome. I think that's a pretty good there's nobody on there that I don't think deserves to be on there. Like Patrick Queen had a really bad missed tackle down by the goal line. Like if you wanted to leave him off and make him neutral, that wouldn't hurt me. But I feel like the rest of this list is good to go.
Yeah, I felt the same there. I kind of went back and forth about Patrick Queen. I think that he made more of those run stuffs than he missed, and that's why I kind of gave him credit for a 1-star there. But it was kind of like a if, because I think he was also part of the problems in the pass game, which I want to get to you about in a second here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, because that's a big thing here. We do have plenty of skulls to hand out, including multiple skulls for multiple people. So we'll get to those next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, to remind you, this show is also brought to you by the College Football Playoffs on TNT. It's that time of the year. The College Football Playoffs are back. And with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT sports coverage of the College Football Playoffs begins December 21st, starting with the College Football Playoff Kickoff Show, presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into our first matchup, it's SMU Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoffs presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, let's get to some of the skulls here. I have a limited amount of 1 skulls because I got more 2 skulls and 3 skulls to hand out. But I was back and forth about whether I should give some of these guys more skulls than they actually got. So I want your thoughts here real quick. I got 4 1-skull guys: Broderick Jones, Dante Jackson, Montravius Adams, Joey Porter Jr. In this one. Montravius Adams for the penalty that he committed. I didn't think that he really rebounded from that, which gave the Eagles, didn't give them any more points, but it gave them extra time of possession. Thought that was a moment that Steelers couldn't use. I think that Dante Jackson could have gotten a worse grade if he had stayed in the game longer, but he really just got beat for that touchdown and one other play. And he only played, I think, 14 snaps in the game in total. So his injury kind of prohibited him from getting more skulls here. But the one guy that you have kind of reprimanded me on several times for giving him multiple skulls, or giving him more skulls than you thought, was Joey Porter Jr. And in this game, he got beat a few times, but he also had a couple really good coverage reps on AJ Brown, which is not an easy assignment at all in the world now. Joey Porter did get targeted 7 times, allowed 5 catches on those for 69 yards. And that certainly wasn't everything you wanted, but I didn't think that Joey Porter Jr. had a really rough game when I looked back at the totality of it. Am I right to give him a skull here, or would you give him more?
I'm good with a skull. No, I think that's one. That's good. I didn't think his tackling was great.
You did miss the tackle, yeah.
I think a lot, if you're just looking at the kind of the sort of whoever, PFF or whatever, assigning, cover, who's this target assigned to? A lot of that is the Eagles just throwing at holes in cover 3. And you can say that's Joey Porter Jr.'s guy, but he has no real chance to prevent the play from being completed. I had a bigger issue with the fact that I thought they didn't tackle well enough. And the idea of cover 3 is that it's supposed to be catch and tackle. And it's not supposed to be catch and tackle and let a 170-pound wide receiver drag you forward, or get, or miss a tackle and then get 10 yards of yak. And so I don't the reception yardage totals. Those are just running plays, basically. There's no, no one on the defense is really in a position to stop them from happening. So and then he kept the lid on it against AJ Brown, and I thought he actually did a really nice job of being really physical without taking a penalty. So I don't know. I didn't think the tackling, I thought, was a little suspect across the board for the Steelers defense. I think you can include Joey in that, so I'm cool with the skull. But man, you hand a guy AJ Brown, I didn't think he did bad.
I didn't think he did too bad either. I did give him a skull because he lost more than he won. But did think that he wasn't the biggest problem. To your point, I think that a big part of the problem that came in the Steelers defense was that they had to kind of go to a zone coverage, especially once Dante Jackson came out the game. They couldn't run in man-to-man. Which kind of put them in some tough spots. As the Eagles, they have a really good group of, a really good talented group on offense that can spread you out, use you, and catch you in different spots and catch you in mismatches when you're in zone. And that's just a really hard thing to account for. I think it's something that the Steelers are kind of on their way to being like with the way that they're building their roster, and AKA why I called it the Andy Weidel ball all last week and said that that's where the Eagles have the advantage. They're a developed version of an Andy Weidel team, whereas the Steelers are a growing version of an Andy Weidel team. So I think that that's certainly part of the factor there. Let's get to our 2 skull grades, because one person on this I thought was kind of the biggest culprit, not because he's a terrible player, but just when he's the backup, they're going to pick on him. I put James Pierre getting a 2 skull grade. I thought that he got caught out of position more than a couple times, and I think that that's where other issues started to bleed out more for the Steelers. He gave up the touchdown to Devontae Smith when they were kind of setting him up to be the guy to get that there. So I gave him 2 skulls for being this one, but I also gave 2 skulls to Isaac Seumalo. We do have a couple 3 skullers we're going to get to. I thought Seumalo, forget the guy that's supposed to be the leader on the offensive line, I thought he had one of the roughest outings of the group. When I looked back and I looked at how he did both in the run blocking game, I thought he did not create nearly enough space. He also gave up 5 pressures. Granted, no sacks in this game, but I thought that Isaac Seumalo could have been a lot better in this contest.
I mean, it's a tough assignment, but I agree.
It is a tough assignment.
I don't think Isaac got the better of it, and I think he struggled. Yeah. Like when you look at I thought Mason McCormick did better, and that probably shouldn't be happening, right? And so I agree with that. Pierre in a tough spot, but I mean, I'm okay with it. There's a couple guys you haven't mentioned that I'm curious about. Are they 3 or are they 0? I guess I'm going to find out.
You're going to find out right here. There were some people that I think I might have missed, because as always, I'm trying to rush through to get these slides together when I'm doing my all 22 review. I still haven't done a full watch. I've kind of had to piece up certain portions of what I was doing, but I have 2 3 scholars here. Who do you think they are?
Dan Moore.
Correct.
And Najee Harris.
You're on the money. I gave 3 skulls to both these guys. Dan Moore, I felt like the penalty, the sack he gave up, I didn't think he made up enough of that with what he did in the run game. He didn't. It was crazy. It wasn't a high volume of plays that he got beat in the pass rush, but the sack that he gave up, the penalty that he gave up, and he didn't really do much to counter in the run game. I thought that those were 2 crucial. Those were some really bad moments, and didn't really win the line of scrimmage at all this week. Najee Harris, just for the fact that Najee got 6 yards or 14 yards on 6 carries, and just dropping that pitch at the time that you drop that pitch, it's just the crushing moment of everything was starting to swing back the Steelers' way. And then you mess up that moment. That's why I kind of gave it to him there. When you average 2.3 yards per carry, and you commit the big turnover that kind of gave the Eagles the momentum back when you had it, that's kind of the moment you don't need there. And it's a shame, because I think Najee Harris has been a very reliable set of hands for the Steelers over the years, for him to make that mistake in that moment.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think maybe if you want to give out another 1 scholar, you could throw Landon Roberts in there. I thought the Eagles kind of gave him some fits in coverage. And that's not really his fault, because that's not really his thing. I thought the Eagles did a nice job of getting some mismatches against him. But he did do a nice job against Barkley in the run game. So maybe you want to give it neutral.
That's why I gave him a neutral, because I thought his help in the run balanced out the couple times they picked on him in the pass game. Like the first play of the game, they spread the Steelers out.
Calcaterra. And that's not, it's one thing when you put him on some crazy athletic tight end. That's a matchup that I think, he could have done better on. But, when you lose by 2 touchdowns, there's a lot of blame to go around.
I agree for that sentiment. I think one thing that people always say, it's funny, they always come in the comment section and they say when the Steelers lose, like, oh, the coaches should get skulls for this game. They never say they should get stars when they win. But if there was a game I was going to give skulls for, I feel like this might be one of the more appropriate one for coaches to get this call. I didn't like the plan on offense that was kind of running into the teeth of a very good Eagles defense and not trying to catch them off guard. And I felt like the Eagles definitely out-schemed them to get certain mismatches against the Steelers defense. Granted, personnel played a big factor on both sides of those. No Deshaun Elliott, Dante Jackson going down, Corey Trice still not up and available. James Pierce, kind of the guy that you could pick on. I get that there. And then no George Pickens limits you on offense. I do think that plays a big factor into this, but I feel like this was a situation the Steelers could have countered. Now, again, I think the Steelers in general have been in the right position for most of the season, and I think it's going to be a bigger tell how they respond this week against the Ravens in I don't consider a must-win game, but it's you better doggone win this game if you want to get a home game for this year.
It's interesting you say that about the coaching because I think I have the opposite opinion. I think that the Steelers are completely outmatched, personnel wise. They were completely outplayed for the most part. Execution from the guys on the field, and they were a fumble from their running back who never fumbles away from tying the game in the third quarter. Like, I don't know how you blame the coaching when you're outperforming both your ability and the way you're executing. I don't know. I didn't think it was that big of a problem. I think if you switch the coaching staffs, it's probably more lopsided.
I agree with that. I think that if you handed Mike Tomlin and this coaching staff the already built Andy Weidl roster and give Nick Sirianni the currently building Andy Weidl roster, I think this game gets a lot worse. And I guess you make a good point there. The Steelers scheme did bottle things up for as long as it could, but key mistakes when you fumble, and kill momentum there, and when you lose certain third downs and you're getting those mismatches, that is a key factor there. I felt like there were certain situations the Steelers could have been better prepared, but again, this is an Eagles team that they don't face that often. They're on the road playing a really good version of this team that they don't face often, and I understand your point about some of these matchups just weren't going to be in the favor of the Steelers.
I do have a bus ticket, Chris. I know we're already over time, so I'll try to.
What's your bus ticket?
Replay assist gets a bus ticket here. I don't like the idea in the first place, but if the concept is, look, okay, we're only going to use it when there's a call that's obviously wrong, that the whole nation is like, oh my God, how did the refs get this wrong? And then we're going to jump in and make it right. Okay, I can live with that. I want the call to be right. Everybody wants the call to be right. So if the object of replay assist is like, let's just get the obvious ones right all the time, then I'm on board. I'm on board with getting the obvious ones right. How do you have a game where 2 times replay assist comes in and makes the call worse and makes the call wrong? How do you go to replay assist and say, the Philadelphia Eagles didn't throw a punch? Now, look, I'm okay with the refs on the field saying, you know what? There was a lot of stuff that happened there, but Darnell Washington kind of started it. We're giving 1 penalty to Steelers and nothing to everybody else. You know what? I'm okay with that. But how do you go to replay and then say there's no punches on video?
Yeah,
like you can't do that. Okay, how do you go on video and say that the penalty occurred after the change of possession
and you can clearly see the ball?
The field that it was changed before the change of possession, and you change the call to make it wrong. You change, like the first one, there's a lot of judgment there. Okay, I get that. Okay. But the second one, they literally changed a correct call on the field to an incorrect call with replay assist. That can never happen. And if that ever happens, throw the whole thing away, pack it up on the Greyhound, and get it out of here.
Dang, that's why he calls it the bus ticket. Oh my goodness, Alan was cooking there. No, listen, Alan, I agree with you. It was clear on the Fox angles that they showed on the broadcast that I was watching from home. They threw punches. It was pretty obvious. I thought offsetting penalties, let the play stand, fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'm okay with the refs just saying, you know what, Darnell started it. We'll give the Steelers 1, Eagles none. Yeah. Okay. Manage the game, right?
Yeah.
Okay, especially early in the first quarter. Like, we don't want to start any more fights. We're going to set the standard. You start it. We're going to call it on you. We're not going to let them offset. I can live with that. But don't tell me you looked at the video and there were no punches, man. Don't tell me that.
And then the Jalen Carter head slap on I said like that's just, you can even see in the replay he gets slapped. Connor Hayward's like, what just happened? And then the ball gets punted clearly after that. It's just, I don't know how you fix that one around. I got to admit, being at home, I was so confused when I saw the ball inside the 5. I'm like, wait, what? Why is that there? And then like, it's after the punt, and it just that didn't make sense there. But like referees, I don't actually give grades to them or coaches. Otherwise, we'd be here all day.
We're mailing this one to the NFL in New York. This is a league office one here. We're not
Roger Goodell. You get a bus.
The referees got that one right. It was the men in the room in New York that got that one wrong.
As always, Alan Saunders got some heat for somebody when he comes on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Alan, thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
At @Saunders_PGH on all the social media platforms, PGH Steelers Now, sites account, SteelersNow.com. So you can find my written work and my podcast, Steelers Afternoon Drive. You can find the Steelers Now YouTube page or search anywhere you find podcasts.
Absolutely. He's Alan Saunders. Get all of his great work. He does a great job. Thank you, Alan, for joining us. And thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and Blue Sky and all the things at Carter Critiques. You can find my work here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every Monday through Friday on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our Monday through Friday episodes. You can also read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. I'm working on a film study about the third down defense and things they could have done a little bit better there. But we'll have a lot more to break down. We'll have more things to talk about on tomorrow's episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Tune in. We'll see you then.